Businesses spend millions on simple things like their website, but in primary care, we probably don't do it as effectively as other places. With digital healthcare taking lead in terms of how we deal with patients, focusing on our website is going to be a key point that many of us, I think, need to consider moving forward. But how do we do that? Well, in this episode, I brought an expert who talks about their system at helping you with your practice website, how it can save you time, really awesome, how it can save you money, and definitely stress. So for that reason, I'm proud to present Thomas from iHO Health, and we're going to talk about your practice website with Practice 365. How are we doing, Thomas?
I'm fine, thanks very much.
So thank you for joining us today. I know that you've shown me this product that you've got in terms of Practice 365, and it's been running for a couple of years, but tell us first of all a little bit about the history of Practice 365.
So Practice 365, we started back in the last year, October. We spent a long time working with practices around digital and online spend, e-consultations, video consultations for a lot of years. And one of the things we kept on coming back to is that actually, if patients can't find these services, they can't use the services, they don't understand the nuances of them and which one to use in which situation, you don't get a lot of return on investment back on them. And that seemed like a real shame. I mean, on top of that, practices have a lot to consider around this stuff. So we want to build something that made it really easy for them to make sure that they had the contractual stuff down. It was really easy for them to put stuff they wanted to put on there and promote, but equally that they were getting the best use out of the online services that they had out there. Mm-hmm. So Practice 365 is really about giving practices the tools that other organisations have when it comes to online, making it work in a way that works for primary care, that makes sense for primary care, and does that without lots of stress or cost or effort really on the practices side.
Awesome. And I think coming up soon, there's loads of stuff about accessibility, particularly for websites that potentially a lot of practices haven't really considered. How do you see that, I guess, changing in the next few weeks even, to be honest?
So, accessibility is a really interesting area. It's an area we focused on a lot for a few reasons. So one is that accessibility has always been something practices should have and needed to care about online, but historically the websites have been a brochure. They've been an addition to the service that the practices have been offering. Mm-hmm. However, with this big move towards online consultations, less patients in practice, lots more mobile patient populations where the website is really going to be the bulk of their interaction and knowledge seeking from the surgery. The website is now a constituent part of that service. So there's been these accessibility regulations around for a long time. These came in September 2017, 2018, and previous websites were kind of grandfathered into that. And we're coming up to the deadline this year where actually you have to look at that, you have to have a policy, and you have to make sure the website's accessible. And I try to, I spend a lot of time telling people that accessibility isn't just for people with additional needs. Accessibility gives you lots of benefits past and above that. So, an accessible website is going to load faster, it's going to be more tolerant to being used on mobile, it's going to be more tolerant to be used where you've got slow internet speeds. But even in day-to-day life, there's lots of assistive technology that makes my life easier, which wasn't designed primarily to be there for me. So the example I always use is every time I cross a road, I probably cross when I hear the beep from the crossing. The beep was there for people who need to hear it because they can't see the green man. Whereas actually that's an assistive technology that's really useful to me. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the websites. So, making sure that the links are right, that the images are correct, the layout and the structure of the sites make sense, help everyone, not just us with accessible needs. Accessibility is a moving target. So one of the things that we've spent quite a lot of time doing is making it so that practices have the assurance that a lot of that stuff's thought out, and the stuff that requires them to think about it, we've done in a way that they can't get wrong, so that that the page flows always flow in a way that makes sense for people using screen readers. Same with things like translations. You can put buttons on to translate to languages, but we've done lots of things to make it a little bit easier. So if your language on a computer level set to a different language, when you go onto the website, it automatically translates it into that language and things like that, so that you're not pecking around for translation buttons. The same with the accessibility stuff. If we can tell that you've got a screen reader on, we'll just show the user that mode for the site, so that practices don't have to think about this stuff. Web text moves quite quickly, it can be quite complex. there's always new best practice. It's never finished.
Mm-hmm.
So we spend a lot of time really understanding that and what it means for primary care, and enabling it in a way that just makes it really quick and easy. I don't need to worry about that.
Awesome.
They can focus on the content and what it is that they're trying to say and communicate, and we try and take care of everything else for them.
So you're saying that with one of those things that your platform will allow people to actually have the websites translated into the native language of the patient, where they've already got set on their phone, for example, i.e., Polish patient who doesn't normally use English as their first language can get it in Polish directly without having to worry about without the practice having to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really important just around point of access. So if you need people to jump through a hoop, even if it's a small hoop, even if it's a hoop that is completely reasonable to expect a patient to jump through to access information, that's always a hurdle that is going to send them to go back down the route that they would usually use, which is usually phoning the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So anything we can do to kind of finesse that a little bit is always going to be better.
Cool. So I guess big thing coming up obviously shortly is flu campaigns, having that automatically translated into the native language of the patient. Yeah, that'd make my life a lot less stressful, hopefully, if they're using the website and things. You mentioned a deadline though. What's this accessibility deadline?
So the regulations come in force this year, September the 23rd. So by that date, practices need to either have an accessible website or have a statement saying they're working towards with an accessibility policy. We've put a few tools and resources on the Practice 365 site to help practices with that at the moment. So there's a accessibility policy generator, there's a site audit tool, so you can put in your current website address and see where you may or may not have issues. And it's one of those things. It's really important, but it's been important for a few years now. So this deadline is here, and hopefully that's focusing a lot of practices' minds. It's focusing on a lot of public sector organisations' minds, because this stuff is part of your service now. It's not an add-on anymore. You can't really argue that it's not a constituent part of the service, and therefore this stuff is super important. So we've got some guides, as I say, we've got the policy generator, we've got the site audit tool. They're proving really popular. They're helping practices just get on and go. And again, like all the stuff that we do for current customers, we've been going through and updating the site. So we have audit reports that run weekly and monthly, where the team go through and check everything, make sure those policies are going on. We like to kind of think of ourselves of it's not just a platform. You're really buying into the team and the service. So the team work with practices ongoing to understand what they're trying to do. Accessibility is the big one at the moment. Online services is a big one at the moment, but there's always something. Primary care never stays the same for very long. So there's always something that's changing, and the team really understand that. So we check in with practices quite regularly. We understand what's going on in their patch, and then we update the websites to really match and get the best out of what they're trying to do.
Cool. And you mentioned that site audit that's free. So just for our EGP learners, if you are watching us or if you're listening to us on the podcast, just check down below in the show notes and stuff. I'll put the link up, and it's probably coming up right now on screen if you're watching us as well. So you can take a look at that, just assess your practice website as it is already. And I guess there's further information in terms of how to help you from there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, it's quite a really detailed report. So you get a PDF out the back of it to your email. It checks lots of things, accessibility, I think set up right for Google My Business. I think set up right for social media. I think set up right for Google. And it gives you just really, really easy to understand. This is why it's important. This is what you can do to improve it. Knowing that this stuff is never really finished. There's always something else to do. So it just chunks it out, and you can use that to switch to ourselves and go through that process with us. Equally, the reports perfectly acceptable to send it on to whoever currently provides your website, so that they understand what you're trying to look at as well. There's a lot of tools that we always try and provide, and we want to make them useful for everyone, not just for our customers. So that's there as a resource for everyone.
Awesome. And if those practices that are wondering what on earth is Google My Business, why are they talking about it in some way, check out this video that's coming up right here that gives you that detail and that information in terms to look at. Definitely recommend it for practices, as many of you, my EGP learners, know. But you mentioned some of those functions, Thomas. So could you just give us a quick headline of, I guess, the top 3 to 5 things that you think Practice 365 can help practices with? And then we're going to have a look at the actual platform after that, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So one of the things that practices care a lot about, and I think is the one of the best features of the platform, is that it's a really great looking, adaptable website. So it looks and feels NHS, but there's still plenty of opportunity to put the practice personality on it. So we always say, sisters, not twins. The NHS brand, has evolved a lot over the last few years. NHS UK replaced NHS Choices. There's a lot more of these online portals that patients are using, and therefore the more that we can do to make sure that they recognise it and trust it as part of the NHS helps them feel more comfortable engaging with some of this technology online. So that's really important. Because we've done that, we also get a lot of the other benefits. So you can include content from NHS UK, from these other places, and it looks NHS, patients trust it, and it feels really easy to use. And I guess that's probably the second main feature that we always talk about, the ease of use. So practices get complete access to do everything they want to the site themselves, and they can go absolutely crazy with the amount of stuff they can do. They've got all the access to do that themselves anytime they want. The flip side of that is that actually we make that really easy to do, really easy, but they've also got access to the team to do that stuff for them. So some practices will do a lot of heavy lifting themselves, but it may be that there's something that they just want us to add on. Equally, they might be trying to do something around a flu campaign. There's something, a new AQP in the area, something like that they want to really make sure that they're signposting effectively. And that's where our team comes in quite a lot and says, great, that content's fine. How about if we laid it out like this? How about if we signposted to that service in this place? How would that flow look for patients? And that's really important to make sure that you've got that level of engagement to the content. So we do that quite a lot. And again, I think that probably ties into the next feature, which is we call it broadcasting. So within the platform, you're adding content to the site yourself. You can also pull content in from other places. So one of those places is our content library. So we work with some practice managers and some friendly GPs who produce content for us. So, if one practice has a news article about moving to EPS4, every practice is going to need that at some point. Likewise, if one practice is spending time to figure out, well, what we're telling patients about face coverings, then actually that's going to be out. Every practice is going to be looking at that. So we have a content library in there, so you can just pull content down, include it in the site. We don't put it on there for you initially. It's there as a library so that you can tailor it. You can make sure it's right for you. So all the sites don't end up looking identical either, but it's there as a really, really good resource library. Equally, if you're working across an area, you can then share that content between practices. So that becomes useful if you've got maybe a situation where you've got a few sites because you've got a main site and 2 branch sites that operate under their own brand still. Equally, that may be something that you want to do across an area. So within a PCN or across a federation, and say, well, actually, it might make sense to employ a role, or there's someone who's got a keen interest in this stuff to produce content that we can share out. And that becomes 2 clicks to be able to generate the content and push it out everywhere it needs to be. And that's all the content in the site. So that's news articles, that's pages, that's forums, that's surveys, the social media integration, any of that stuff can work in that way. And there's even some stuff we can do with check-in screens and things. So if you're using the check-in screens that support RSS feeds, you can pull content in from the website straight onto those screens. So it's actually quite a powerful idea that with one click, that actually you could get that same message in across all practices in an area to all the patient touch points with very little effort on the practice side. There's a lot of stuff at the moment where you get an email, everyone gets the email, everyone has to kind of regurgitate it into their own words, add it into their own website. And that's a lot of time that adds up across the patch, I would say. One of the other great features we've got within the content editor is the ease of adding content. So we tend to say to practices, just throw content at the system and let the system worry about how it needs to look. So, if you want to add a YouTube video in, you can just paste the link to the YouTube video and it knows that it's a YouTube video and it'll go and embed all the content. Equally, if you want to include a Public Health England campaign, you can just put a link to the Public Health England campaign and it knows what the image is, it knows what the leading text is and include it in there for you. If you want to put a PDF on, it will embed the PDF within the page so that the patient can see it without having to download it first. Little things like that actually really speed up the process and make it much easier to get content on the site. there's an old adage, and I think it's the same for practice websites as it is for any website. It's only as good as when it was last updated. And if patients are coming back to it and seeing new content, then the trust, the evergreenness of the rest of the content, and understand, they're less likely to call and say, well, I saw this page, I just, I know it says this on the website, but I just want to call to check if that's true. It gives them that general feel that everything's there and everything's up to date.
Awesome. So just to cover that then, so we've got branding, we've got ease of use, we've got broadcasting, and particularly that concept of content libraries that can be adaptable and usable across either practices or networks themselves. And we've got that ease of use in the fact that it just automatically will size itself up with the accessibility kind of stuff to make sure it looks good to the patient. So then that can help build their kind of like trust within the brand itself. So it kind of all feeds into that concept of providing an authoritative brand for your patients via your practice. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we say quite a lot. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Practices are individual. They are their own individual organisations. They will have their own individual priorities. And what we work to do and what the team works to do is really understand practices and tailor it to suit them. So, the top 5 features for one practice might be different to the top 5 features for another. And there's lots of scope within the system to really understand that and flex around the practice.
Cool. I know there's some additional features, but shall we just take a quick look at what it kind of looks like, if that's all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a practice website?
Yeah, this is a live practice, not too far away from me in Leeds.
Quick fun fact, I've actually worked at that practice before as a locum.
It's surprising how often that comes up when I'm doing demos and things like that. GPs get around. So as a practice, they had quite a strong brand. So that comes through in the website. So these have got NHS Blue. They've got their logo. We've got some content here. These are the individual signposts for the content that they're trying to really push through to. Some e-consultations, latest news, some more online service signposting. And this is what's important to this practice. They've also embedded in their Twitter straight into the front page there as well. And you'll notice one of the things we do, that the contact details are right down at the bottom, because we want it to make it easier for patients to come use online consultations, to use these services before picking up the phone. And that's not about making these really hard. We don't hide them, but we've just structured it so that actually the patient has to do a little bit of work, and the consultations are the path of least resistance. And that helps really pushing through some of the uptake there as well. Similarly, if we look at Central Lakes, they're a practice in Cumbria. Big population on the weekend of holidaymakers, and they get a lot of people coming to the site trying to access care that actually they could access elsewhere more efficiently. And certainly at the moment, they don't want lots of people turning up at the door saying, oh, I need an emergency repeat script. So, the same feel, same style. They've got some really good local photography. That's out of our image library of the area there. So again, lots of personality for the practice, and they've built this visitor hub within the site to kind of say, well, look, actually, if you need the right help when you're away from home, here's all the places you can go. And as you come down, we've got some nice signposting to NHS 111. We've got some signposting to the NHS app. So some other problems, alternate services, NHS Find services. So, it's a different approach to signposting than another site would have, but actually that's something that really helps them. And this is what I was talking about earlier, saying, this is about understanding what an individual's practice's priorities are and the individual needs that they have. This isn't something we put on every site, but actually absolutely makes sense for this practice, and maybe a few others, but certainly not everyone. Equally, we have another practice here using eConsult. And that's an interesting thing we've done actually. So we've built in default signposting widgets for all the e-consultation and PFS solutions. So it doesn't matter whether you use an eConsult, Engage Consult, Footfall, DoctorLink, Clinic, any of them, or whether you're promoting patient access, System Online, MyGP, the NHS app. We've got content for each of them, and in most cases we work with the providers direct to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date content. and that helps those providers as well. The more people that use these solutions, the better it is for them commercially. But ultimately, for the practice, if patients are using it, then you're getting more value out of it, and that's a really big thing for us. And it always depends, how the site wants to use this stuff. So we've got some image banners here. We've got other sites where they're using pop-up banners that come up on the front screen of the sites as well. So as we come down, you can see, the content's laid out nicely. It's presented well. If I come into news, we have an archive view here of, recent news, and each of these bits of content really quick for me to zoom into, really easy to understand. I can reformat it for mobile, and that works really well. To look at clinics and services. So clinics and services is an interesting one, actually. If you look at how practices add some of this stuff on the sometimes. So when a new customer joins us, one of the things we do is we migrate all their old content into the platform for them, and that's an opportunity to give it a bit of a tidy up at the same time. And what you find a lot of the time is you'll have 3 or 4 new services on the homepage that may not be that new anymore, but then aren't listed anywhere else in the website. And when we kind of delved into why that was happening, it's not because practice managers are lazy. It couldn't be any, nothing, further from the truth. It's basically just, the way you have to think about content within the website means it's really sometimes a bit of a burden to go, well, actually, we've got this new service, so I need to add it onto the homepage to promote it. I need to add a news post about it to tell people it's new. And then I need to go add it to that big list of clinics and services that we have. So within our system, we manage all this content separately. So you can just go in and add a new service, and that will build you, the page for that service with all the links on it that you need. It will lay out within this clinic and service page itself. So you don't really have to think about this page. You just need to think about your clinics and services. So it becomes much more about the content rather than the layout. And we do that in a few other places as well. So policies is another one. So this is the stuff that I always say. It's stuff that someone somewhere has said needs to be on the website, but patients probably aren't looking for. Pardon me. So, things like GP earnings, named accountable GPs. I don't think we've ever seen a practice website that doesn't have this same statement on. Very similar wording. Has to be on there, but you don't necessarily want it getting in the way. So these are, again, all things that are managed separately in the back end, and we just pop them all on the same page in one place. Really easy to get to. If a patient wants to find it, or a CQC want to find something, they can use the search and it'll pop right up. But actually, we don't really, we don't want the cognitive overload having to manage all that content. So we make that much easier. And we do the same thing. You'll notice the website doesn't have drop-down menus. That's there's a reason for that. So a drop-down menu makes people think that everything in a drop-down menu is all the content. And if the thing they're looking for isn't in the drop-down menu, to stop engaging with the site. So it's much better, and it's better for accessibility as well, to be fair, to not have a drop-down menu, to be able to click to go on.
Less
kind of just get a much, and if someone's clicked, they're more likely to click again. It's when I first started in web design, quite a few years ago now, it used to be about being above the fold, having all the content on one page. And actually, if Facebook and social media has taught us anything, is actually there's an appetite for scrolling, sometimes endless scrolling for far too long. But certainly, the idea that there's content below the fold, people understand. And therefore, we can use that in a way that makes it much easier to come in and help people come through the website and find the stuff they want down a journey. It's not about putting every link possible in the website on the home page and confusing the patient with choice. It's about understanding, well, actually, if 60% of the visits to the site are probably for these 3 things, include those on the home page, and trust that if they want the information, they've come to the website anyway, and then we can help them find it by taking them through that journey. That's much, much easier than, just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks when it comes to signposting.
Cool. And so for our eagle-eyed viewers, they may have realized that this website seems to be back-ended onto something called WordPress. Just for those that don't know, WordPress pretty much runs majority of the internet. I think it's something like 70%, is it, or something like that, Thomas?
Yeah, I think, yes. Certainly the last figures I saw was 70% of FTSE 500 companies run on WordPress. And I think in this day and age, it's silly not to. It's such a great base. the amount of investment that goes into WordPress is significant, and because it's open source, it means it's free at the point of use, which means that we can build upon that and then share the stuff we're doing. So one of the interesting ways that kind of exposed itself, so the theme that we use within WordPress is based on another open source theme that we're building in collaboration with Health Education England and the Digital Leadership Academy. So this same WordPress theme is probably what's going to end up powering a lot of WordPress sites. We've been looking at it from a primary care point of view, and we've contributed all the improvements we've made to that theme back to the project as well, so other NHS organisations can benefit from some of this work without cost, and that, that's the right thing to do. We always think, you can see further by standing on the shoulders of giants, and that's certainly the case with WordPress. It's a really great tool. The majority of SMEs and enterprises will be using it to power their websites. So why shouldn't practices have that same level of functionality? What we've done is tailored it to take some of the rough edges off, some of the technical edges that don't make sense to practices, shouldn't make sense to practices, and added extra things in that make it much easier for practices. So that shows itself in quite small ways. So I've just jumped into the back end here, and if I jump into this news post, so this is a news post that's coming from the content library. So you see we've got a title, we've got a content block here, and this is an NHS style content block as a quote. So we've kind of thought, well, actually, what is it about EPS that's important? Well, actually, we want patients to understand. So this is the most important piece of content. We're grading this date. This helps the NHS save money. Why is it important to patients? And then we've got a bunch of extra content that's also useful for them, and then a read more link. And this is all NHS branded. So if I wanted to add an image in or something like that, or maybe it's a flu, so do's and don'ts. Actually, I won't go through that menu. I'll come through my big menu. And I look in this NHS section. These are all the things that we've added into the platform. Some of the stuff we added into the platform over and above what's there for WordPress. So do's and don't list, for instance, lets me build some really quick content. Do get a practice. Don't end up with the entire panel. So you can then create some really nice design content that's NHS style. These are the same blocks and styles that have been used on the NHS website. If I want to add a button in, I can do that as well. And again, start here. These green buttons now are, appearing everywhere within NHS online journeys, and patients understand them. So, to be able to use that same format, and it's design, there's nothing really technically clever about some of this stuff. But what it is simple and easy to use in a way that makes it easy for practices to benefit from that. So, quite quickly they can start creating a news post, which looks really good and is really engaging with patients. I'll show you what I was talking about earlier. So we've got a YouTube video here. So if I went to insert that here, usually with a more traditional website platform, you have to go get the embed code. There's all this HTML. Not quite sure what that means. Which bit do I need? We can just paste that link in, and it'll go, oh great, that's the video, and embeds it in there. Equally, things like images is a thing that comes up quite a lot with practices. Imagery is quite important for practice websites. It helps patients engage with the content. But what is really difficult is understanding, is this random picture that I found in Google Images okay to be used? Is it licensed? Is it copyrighted? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get a really big fine? And again, that's that kind of cognitive overload that just stops people doing some of this stuff. So we've built in this instant image search. So any images that are in here are absolutely fine to use. Some of these are licensed image sources that we include within the platform for practices that don't have to pay any extra for. All the public health England images are in here. We also do things like Search Creative Commons, Flickr, Unstock, all those open source image libraries as well, so that I can come and get some really good content. Maybe actually, let's talk about pharmacy. An ETP post, so I can come and get some pharmacy. We have tried to, as much as possible, not have all doctors in lab coats, because that's not very England. but some of them do slip through. So let's grab these, and you'll see what it's doing here. It's going to download the image, copy it into the site, making also the sizes are fine, and then it's going to resize it down. And you'll notice, because accessibility is really important, what we've also done is automatically set the alt text. So this is what will display when the patient hovers over it if they're using existing technologies, and you'll see it's described the image quite well. Orange and white medication pill. Yep, that is what the image is. And then I can insert that straight into the site, really, really easy. And again, it's got the options for the captions. That's all NHS styled. Really easy for me to do. If I want to resize it, I can do. If I want to drag it around, I can do. So super quick to start just throwing content into a post and making sense of it. And WordPress is a really key part of that. And we don't shy away from telling practices about that. It also means that, there's a lot of developers working on WordPress. So if a practice comes to us with a question, and I always say we like the can I's, how do I's, could I questions. All those questions, there's very rarely, ever do we have to say no, because someone somewhere has done something like this in WordPress, and we can harness that, we can build on top of that, we can primary careize it, to coin a phrase, and make it work really well for practices so that you can do those things. So when it comes to the form builder within the system, we've got a really great dynamic form builder that lets you build a survey or a friends and family test with all the same level of functionality you'd get doing something in Google Forms or in Microsoft Forms or SurveyMonkey, anything like that, within your own website, within your own website address, with all the security that we've got built in there, without having to worry about using those services. So we always, we like practices to challenge us. The can I's, could it questions we really enjoy, because it gives us an opportunity to help them out and do some of that stuff as well.
And I think with that, you've also got a collaborative project with Primary Care IT, don't you, in terms of the form builder stuff and things that you guys have been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So One Contact is built on top of Practice 365, but it's a set of form templates for that system for Q. So it's the other side of the coin to e-consultations. So things like QoF reviews, remote medication reviews, remote disease reviews, where actually there's quite a challenge for practices to get people into the surgery, and rather than e-consultations that really focus on an acute need, I the patient have a need that I need from the surgery. This is the other side of the coin, which is I, the clinician, have a need to get some information from the patient, which they may or may not be bothered about providing, unless it's in a really easy to use way. And that's built within the same platform. So the ability to broadcast content across sites, the ability to customize the forms is all powered by Practice 365, and it's a big part of the work that we do. So we're really keen on collaboration and building an ecosystem around some of this stuff. So we've worked with all the PFS providers, the majority of the consult providers. We're doing lots of work with Primary Care IT around some of this stuff. We play well with others. This isn't about creating a solution that's, your surgery has to use this, and this to get the maximum benefit. It's the solution's job to fit around the surgery, not the other way around. So, we'd rather work with as many people as possible, making sure that all those solutions can be exposed within the websites in a really great way. That's ultimately better for everyone. Certainly at a time when we're seeing more investment in digital within primary. And certainly from the centre, that's really important to make sure that some of this stuff can stick and that they see the benefit, and that it's not that this stuff doesn't begin to stagnate again. That practices see an enduring, lasting benefit from investing in the time that's required to do some of this stuff.
Definitely. And I think if people did want to check out more about particularly the One Contact tool, make sure you check out our NHS Digital First Providers Guide #2, where you can see that product being shown. I guess the final thing I kind of wanted to explore with you, just before we finish off, was one of the things that I know this system allows you to also do is things like electronic billing, which was never really a feature for general practice until COVID came along and kind of said that we shouldn't really be using cash. And I know that when you showed this to me, I thought this was something that was really useful potentially for practices that don't have the time burden to invest in some of this. So could you just briefly show us what this looks like and how it can help practices?
Yeah, so it's an add-on to the form tool. So and again, it is part of that that kind of situation we've got where we can hook into a wider ecosystem. So online payments are something that are really common for anything. So if you think of before a booking, you might want to take online payment. It might be for a private service, so letters, driver medicals,
Travel
even
clinics.
private flu jobs, travel clinics. That's a really good one. So you can within a form ask the questions you want, and it may just be I need to take a payment. I don't want to worry too much around how much the payment's for at this point. So I can put a price in. We'll change this to UK pricing in a second anyway. So essentially we can build a form. We tend to do this as part of the private clinic forms. So, non-NHS fees within there, I've been requested to pay this. Equally, that could be a link that you could send to a patient by email, could be by Accurex. It might be that the form's the start of the journey. So, there's a lot of Uber test centres out there. There's a lot of surgeries very close to those test centres. And actually, there's some good revenue by being able to pick up on some of that work as well. So, they could type the content in, we'd get a total, and then the submit would take them through. Now, let me just double check that we have the billing turned on this site. Yeah, we don't. So let me just see if I can just quickly turn that one on. So, this is kind of an insight into the form system here as well. So forms trigger actions when you submit the data. So, the common one with forms is send email. You could create some content in the site. We could send some API data elsewhere. We could send an SMS. We could put it into a bunch of other tools. PayPal e-commerce tools being one of them. What we've actually done is we've integrated with Stripe. So if you have bought anything on the internet in the last year, you've almost definitely used Stripe. So it's a really good secure payment processor. We've partnered with them on an agency level, which means that we do all the fiddly account setup for you and go through all the know your customer checks and money laundering stuff. We don't take any cut for the payments to go through it. So essentially you can have a form on your website where a patient clicks, fills out their details, securely pays the surgery, and then that money gets sent to the surgery directly. And it's within 24 hours as well. You can also do it so the payments go into different pots. So I know sometimes, depending on the services, you might want to allocate the money in different places. Sometimes, that's because you've got certain private services running out of the clinic. Sometimes it's because, you want to just keep an eye on where money's coming from and to. And we make that really easy doing the site. But it's a feature that came from a can it, could it question from a practice. And about 20% of our customers are now using those online payments. And that's kind of really testament to the sign of the times. Patients want to be able to pick up, pay for this stuff easily online. Practices want to be able to accept cash without having patients come into the surgery. So it's all about, and that's the kind of thing most SME businesses, most enterprise businesses wouldn't really have this concept of there's a service that I'm going to deliver to you remotely, or there's something that you need me to do remotely, but I'm going to make you come in to pay me. And then you'll go away and you'll come back and get the thing. It's not a concept that people see elsewhere, but because of the history of primary care and the way primary care works, that has been an enduring thing. And this is just another way that the platform lets practices adopt some of this stuff that has been, SMEs have benefited from for a long time. We want to make sure that those tools, there's a lot of providers out there. We're really about supporting NHS primary care. There's a lot of web developers, there's a lot of web technologists in some of these bigger private companies that are competing with NHS GP surgeries. And we think it's only fair that practices should get some of these tools as well.
Definitely agree with you on that point. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I've seen this platform. I think it's amazing. I love the fact that it can share that content so easily and effectively. And also that commitment that your team has at supporting practice. So the fact that your team will help support migrate practices over from their current system to this, it's something that's not often, dealt with quite well. I must admit, by some other companies when I've explored what they offer and things. So really encouraging to hear that level of support and engagement that exists within the service and stuff. I know if people did want to check this out, I think the best place, where would that be for them to have a look?
So absolutely, the Practice 365 website. So we've got a nice little video on there, rundown of some of the features. You can also send us a message. We're doing a lot of time at the moment trying to speak to as many practices as possible. So we're always happy to jump on a demo. It's not a sales call. I'm not a salesperson. What we like doing is showing off this work that we've been doing and helping to understand practices. That's vital for us. Equally, we often help our practices who don't end up moving to ourselves, and that's absolutely fine. It's a consultative service. We want to be the practice's web team, essentially. So Practice 365 website is a great place to start. We're also sharing lots of stuff on LinkedIn, lots of stuff on Twitter, really great communities to be on there as well. So, we want to engage with practices in as many places as possible. Certainly the website's the best place to start.
So EGP Learners, if you do want to check it out, feel free to check out the links down below. They'll give you access to all the content, and particularly in terms of the where to go to the website and stuff. Thank you, Thomas, for this demonstration. I know I've enjoyed it. I know, having seen this before, having played with it before, really like the package and effectively what the website system allows you to do as a practice. And I cannot emphasize this enough, the amount of time I think this will save practice managers is something that should not in any way be underestimated. And the fact it ticks loads of those boxes of engagement, I'm pretty sure CQC will look on this a lot more favorably than what some practices are currently doing. And that in itself is a massive, massive, massive thing I think the practices need to think about. So definitely really encourage people to at least have a look and see what they think about it. I'm a massive fan of this system and definitely would recommend that practices, like I said, take a look at it. As always, EGP Learners, if you've got any comments or questions, feel free to contact me, whichever platform you prefer. If you want to check out more of our content, have a look at this video that's coming up right here. And as always, subscribe, comment, feel free to share as best as you can. And as always, EGP Learning is here to help save you and your patients time by taking answering primary care and learning. Catch you next episode.